in love with all of my fellow prize winners. And I was joking but sort of serious last night, and I said I think many of the other Windham-Campbell Prize winners had never heard of me, and I certainly hadn't heard of most of them. But I'm going to read all of their work because I think I've just met 8 incredibly extraordinary people, and I just want to bow to all of them and thank them for the incredible contribution they've made to humanity, and I want to give them a round of applause tonight also. You know, we all did this reading last night where each of us read 10 minutes of our work. And you know, Tom McCarthy and I, Tom never remembers my name, but I'm sorry. I was calling him Tim yesterday after he botched my name. You know, we were just talking and saying that, you know, we were listening to Stephen and Terrell, you know, who are incredible playwrights, reading their work, and it was just so profoundly moving. The sense that you feel like you're in the presence of greatness, but it's a greatness that you, as a part of your regular life, what you do. I'm a political junkie, I'm a war reporter, all this stuff. It's a world that I know almost nothing about, and I've been thrust into it by some bizarre set of circumstances where I'm some weird member of a strange literary X-Men team that somehow planted itself on Yale, and you know, there are 9 fingers, but together we're 2 fists, and it's like this. And I've loved every second of it. And you know, my dad, who's a nurse from Milwaukee, was here during this thing. And he was like, he kept saying, I can't believe that we're here. And I'm a college dropout who somehow ended up getting a $150,000 check from a rare library collection at Yale. But it's been just such an amazing experience. And you know, and I want to thank Michael for all the work that he did, and I'm sorry for swearing at you the night that you called me to tell me that I was getting this prize, but I had never heard the term 150,000 thrown at me with a $ sign in front of it saying you're getting this. So when I told you to shut the fuck up, I didn't mean it as a person. I also want any students to know here, if you weren't at the awards ceremony, that President Savoy, the new president of Yale, used the word motherfucker at the ceremony. Yeah, and I'm not going to give you any context for it. No, it was because Stephen Gergis's play was called The Motherfucker with the Hat, which was on Broadway and starred Chris Rock, and I mean, he's an amazing guy. I had never heard of him, and then I'm like researching, and I'm like, oh my God, I remember when that came out. That's the experience I've had all throughout this week. I also want to say that a young man who was my intern at The Nation, and then we hired to work on the Dirty Wars project, named Andrew Epstein, is here tonight because he's getting his PhD at Yale, and he's an amazingly brilliant young man. He's in the back there, and I'm going to embarrass him, and he's not trying to hide. But he did incredible work in getting this film and project out into the world, and I'm so glad that he can be a part of your community here at Yale. And I just want to thank the Windham-Campbell Prize for this opportunity, because I've learned so much this week from high school students, and I see Michael Green there, right there, who was a high school student that I worked with the other day and I'm going to work with again, and then all of the folks that we've met here, just an incredibly amazing community you've built. To answer your question, I don't write
What was it again?
I don't write articles in the first person. You know, I tend to try not to. I mean, if I'm talking to students about something and I think there's something about my experience as a journalist that might help them or give them some insight into what they want to do in the world, I'll talk about my personal experience. But generally, if you were to look at the body of work that I've produced over my life as a journalist, I generally don't write at all about myself or in the first person. And when we first started to make this film, we had a sprawling 4-hour mess of a movie that was more like a catalog of horrors, and it didn't really have an actual story to it. And I was very reluctant, and I resisted being the character in the film. And the primary reason for that is that I didn't want to fall into this cliche of the magic cracker, who is the white guy that comes in and explains, you know, all the problems with the brown people around the world, and it's because I loathe that way of telling stories, and so I was really reluctant to go down that path. But we had so much trouble figuring out how to tell the story, and my colleagues and friends who I worked on the film with started saying, everything that you're telling us when we have a drink or a meal or a coffee together is more interesting than the current way that the film is structured, so let's figure out a way to fuse those things together. And we felt like there was a way of telling a story that would resonate with people who are not just political junkies. And I come from a working class family in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I wanted it to be accessible to my aunts and uncles who don't pay attention to this on a regular basis. So we tried to make a film that told a story in a way that was digestible to people, no matter what their political perspective or where they came from in life. And I still am torn about it. And I actually agree with some of the criticism of the film. And I feel good about doing that because none of us are perfect. And I think that what we tried to do was offer the best we wanted to offer a sense of a moment in time in our history and to do it in a way that would be accessible to people, would encourage debate, dialogue, discussion, etc.
I was wondering, as we were getting towards the end of the film there, I kind of wanted to have that DVD extra moment where you sort of brought us up to the present with a lot of the stories that you're weaving together in the film. And I wonder if you might briefly tell us where, for instance, what's JSOC up to at the moment, and some of the other stories that you were telling are really fascinating. I kind of would like to know 2 years later what's happening.
One sort of positive thing that's happened is that Abdullah Haider Shah, the Yemeni journalist who we talked about in the film, who was being kept in prison because of the direct intervention of President Obama, he was released from prison. And he was released from prison in large part because of public outcry. The White House tried to stop him from being released from prison, and he gave a brief statement when he was released, and part of what he said is that there were a handful of journalists, some Yemeni, some international, who never forgot that I was in prison, and I thanked him for it, and we were among the journalists that he thanked for drawing attention to his case, and so I'm really pleased that he's out of prison because it was such a horrid injustice. Although he is under house arrest that's been imposed by the United States, basically. In the original cut of our film, the Somali section was 40 minutes long, and we told this whole history of what happened from the fall of Siad Barre's regime in the early 90s, and Black Hawk Down all the way through the present. JSOC has been empowered more under the presidency of a Democrat, Barack Obama, than at any other moment in history. And at last estimate, I think JSOC was operating in about 120 countries. And in some of those places, they're doing training exercises, and others are doing unilateral actions. But their reach is expanding, their budget is growing. I also want to say that General Stanley McChrystal, who some of you may be students of his, he's on this campus. When the Gardez massacre happened, and those pregnant women were killed, and then the soldiers came and dug the bullets out of their body and then lied up the chain of command, Stanley McChrystal was the head of ISAF at the time. He was the commander of all U.S. and international forces in Afghanistan. And I believe, if you're a student in this classroom, that you should stand up one day and ask Stanley McChrystal to answer for a multi-month cover-up of the killing of President. I don't believe that these people should be allowed to go anywhere in public without being confronted with their actions when they were prosecuting these wars. Stanley McChrystal presided over Murder Incorporated in Iraq when he was the commander of the Joint Special Operations Command. He should not be allowed to give a single lecture at Yale without someone standing up and asking him about Camp Nama in Iraq, the secret prison that JSOC ran, where they would beat people with baseball bats, when they would torture them, when they would douse them with cold water and put them in front of air conditioners. He shouldn't be allowed on a campus like Yale to act as though he's a legitimate member of society when he was responsible for so many crimes against so many people. And I think it's utterly shameful that not a single faculty member at Yale said anything publicly when Stanley McChrystal arrived on this campus. I hope he's not a contributor to the Beinecke Rare Books Collection.
You're asking the wrong guy. we're gonna do some audience questions now.